Hello everyone, welcome back to my Lorcana deck guide series. In these videos, I condense a detailed deck guide into a shorter form factor full of all the important info you need to get started with a new deck. In this video, you'll see my deck list as I break down deck strategy, card choices, ideal play sequences, and more. These days, we're seeing the Lorcana meta settle into its typical balance between top decks, and let's be honest, all the usual suspects are here as always. And I don't say that as a negative, I actually still love the meta of Lorcana and think it's pretty balanced, but I do tend to enjoy exploring the spicy side of things. So today I'm showing off a very fun Emerald Sapphire combo deck, an off-meta choice that's great for anyone looking for something different that still has the strength and surprise factor to be a serious threat. Now, as a bit of a background overview, blue plus green is a color combo in Lorcana that was nearly unplayable in sets 1 through 4. But when set 5, Shimmering Skies, came around, the deck received some new tools like Tipo, Clarabelle, and Vision of the Future that really unlocked some new potential. And now with set 6, Azurite Sea, even more life has been breathed into this ink pairing, with new strategies emerging thanks to cards like Basil, Disguised Detective, Sail the Azurite Sea, Bend to My Will, and more. Because of all these new cards and the wide varieties of strategies that exist between them, there are several ways to build out an Amethyst Sapphire deck right now. There are a few different possible lists, and each focuses on a core set of cards to accomplish its specific goals. So let me quickly walk through a few powerful core identities that Emerald Sapphire can build around. In Lorcana, decks live and die based on card draw ability, and Emerald Sapphire is no different. The main card draw combos in these colors come from the classic Flaversham item engine, or Diablo Devoted Herald, or from Clarabelle Light on Her Hooves. And of course, there's always the ability to run a hybrid of these card draw options. Each of these has their proper uses, but when it comes to this specific ink pairing of Emerald and Sapphire, Clarabelle stands out as a particularly synergistic choice. She draws cards to match your opponent's hand at the end of your turn, so she pairs well with Sapphire, specifically Fishbone Quill. Not only does Quill allow you to ramp into Clarabelle early, whether you're shifting her in or paying full price, but Fishbone Quill also helps you convert your hand cards into Inkwell cards quickly, which means Clarabelle is going to draw you even more cards, as you'll likely have a lot less in your hand compared to your opponent. Because of this quick ink game plan, Clarabelle is often paired with Belle, Strange but Special, for a double Belle duo that aims to ink rapidly into a mid-game with big questing threats. Beyond this, Emerald Sapphire can also lean into a more controlling playstyle. You're obviously not going to match the removal power of Ruby Sapphire, but Clarabelle can easily sing a song like Under the Sea, supported by cards like Ice Block to attempt full board clears. This song can also be sung together by other characters, or sung by something like Hades, which also contributes to a more control-y build. Another 7-cost Emerald card is Bend to My Will, and like Clarabelle, this card feels custom-built to pair with Sapphire. You can ink up to 7 very quickly, slamming this action to discard your opponent's entire hand. I don't think this is a very consistent core idea to build an entire deck around, but there are some fun, wacky ideas such as using 6 ink right before Bend to My Will to play out 2 Prince Johns ready to draw you an ungodly amount of cards on the following turn. Speaking of Prince John, another new blue-green discard strategy is one built around Basil Disguised Detective. Not only does Sapphire give him his best shift targets, but this is another card that once again utilizes Sapphire ramp through inking with cards like Fishbone Quill to make best use of its potential. In this case, a unique hybrid of ramp and discard. So now that we've covered that quick introduction to these ink colors with a few ideas, you can see how these different concepts in Emerald Sapphire are all pretty unique and worth checking out. However, for today's actual deck, let's take yet another different approach. Out of everything in these colors, the combos I'm most excited about are those surrounding You Came Back. This 3-cost action readies a character, allowing it to challenge, sing, or even quest a second time right away. The idea of readying big questing characters is exciting. Between Belle, Ariel, Alice, and Tamatoa, there are a lot of fun Sapphire characters ready to combo with You Came Back. My deck today focuses on the dangerous combo of You Came Back with Ariel, Treasure Collector. The result is an aggressive, early to mid-game deck that can also dish out a deadly one-turn kill combo if given the chance. Now, before I get ahead of myself, let's be honest. People throw around the phrase one-turn kill a lot, especially with Sapphire aerial item decks. However, stick with me here because this is one of the first decks that actually unlocks a realistic and consistent way to gain 15 lore in one turn with little warning or ways for the opponent to respond. The big combo idea is to play 2 or even 3 copies of You Came Back on a single turn, targeting a ready-to-quest aerial and questing multiple times on the same turn. With more items out on your side of the board than your opponent, aerial quests for 5 lore, which means 10 or 15 lore when paired with 1 or 2 copies of You Came Back. Ariel works well because she does a good job of sticking to the board, ready for that one-turn lore explosion on the following turn. After all, she has her ward keyword, plus her 3 strength and 4 willpower dodges a lot of untargeted removal. Other than the obvious be prepared, her only major weaknesses are from solo removal like Tremaine, or something like a double grab your sword. Ariel's sticking power, along with her 5 lore and relatively low ink cost in Sapphire, makes her the ideal target for You Came Back. Add in some secondary ward characters like Goofy and ways to reuse your You Came Backs with Do It Again, and the combos start to take shape immediately. Let's jump in and break down the core of the deck. As you can see here, this is the focused core of the ward combo deck. Like I discussed earlier, there are a surprising amount of considerations and synergies in Emerald Sapphire. I'll get to my full suggested list soon, as well as an interesting Inventor variation that's worth brewing ideas with. But it's important to keep this strong, essential core of 40 cards in mind as we move into those additional ideas. Along with the main combos of Ariel and You Came Back, Hiram Flaversham and his Popsicles help us draw cards, of course, but items like Popsicle are also crucial for activating Ariel's additional 2 lore when she quests. At 2 ink, Tipo and Sail the Azurite Sea are here to ramp quickly into Hiram on turn 3 if needed, drawing cards early off a turn 1 item. But those turn 2 ramp cards also just generally assist Fishbone Quill at getting you up to your combos quick. More specifically, a turn 2 ramp into early Fishbone allows you to get to 7 ink on turn 4, which means a lightning quick Ariel or even Clarabelle played out, depending on if you need aggro pressure or card draw right from the start. Clarabelle light on her hooves is joined by her 1-cost counterpart, Clarabelle Clumsy Guest. She acts as an easy 1-cost shift target, but also as a potential item killer if needed. And you'd be surprised. Against rival Sapphire decks like Ruby Sapphire or Sapphire Steel, you'll find yourself playing Clumsy Clarabelle a lot to clear out an opponent's items so you suddenly have more items than them on board. This will immediately switch an Ariel on board from 3 to 5 lore, and I've surprised opponents with this move quite a bit. Finally, Vision of the Future injects this list with even more card draw and digging power, which is crucial for this deck. Remember, this deck plays aggressive. The goal is to get a character like Ariel out, and then combo a lot of questing lore with multiple You Came Back. This requires digging to find those pieces, so Vision is not just a nice option to have, it's a game-winning inclusion, so it deserves a spot here in the core of the deck. Moving on now to the full deck list here. Not a ton is added to the core cards, as the strategy here is very straightforward. 3 copies of Bonsai are included. These act as another early aggressive character, and even though turn 2 ramp seems like the best early play, Bonsai is often the better choice, particularly if Fishbone Quill is in your opening hand, as it can do the job of ramping starting on turn 3 all on its own. I'll talk more about that line a bit later because I'll be showing off some of the best opening sequences for this deck in just a minute. 2 other Emerald characters also included here are Goofy, Expert Shipwright, and Don Carnage, Prince of Pirates. Both are 5-cost characters that, similar to Ariel, attempt to stick to the board. Goofy with Ward and Don Carnage with Evasive. Although Don is primarily another aggressive choice, his evasiveness is also noteworthy as a defensive tool against things like Diablo or Amethyst Tink, and he can respond quickly when paired with Sapphire, as you can obviously often play him out much sooner with ramped ink. Don Carnage and Goofy also curve nicely into Ariel from 5 up to 6 ink, adding more pressure leading up to her potential combos, or becoming the combo pieces themselves, with You Came Back potentially targeting Goofy and his 3 lore as a backup plan. After all, just like Ariel, he has Ward himself, meaning he has a bit more sticking power than your average 3 lore character, and will be able to survive until he can quest a lot of the time. As a bonus, Goofy can also throw ward onto another character whenever he quests. This is fantastic when used on Don Carnage or even Clarabelle. You can see why this deck is called a ward combo deck, as these combinations can begin to stack up and really become a real annoyance for opponents who would otherwise love to target and remove these sorts of threats. Another way of throwing ward onto characters like Dawn, Clarabelle, or even Hiram is our emerald item, Obscurosphere. This is quite the obscure item indeed. I'm not sure if I've ever seen another player play this item, but just like Goofy, it can also splash ward around onto other characters. However, its primary goal is as a 1-cost inkable item, both for Hiram to eat for card draw or simply to help guarantee Ariel's lore boost for having more items out. There are other item options available, but the ward synergy really is pretty interesting and can come in handy in certain scenarios. But as you may expect, in 9 out of 10 games, Obscurosphere functions as a bonus 1-cost item and nothing more. As for actions, Develop Your Brain is here, assisting Vision of the Future as a cheap tool to dig through your deck a bit more. The core of this deck is still the focused goal here, so another playset of filtering action cards is welcome. Our final uninkable inclusion is 2 copies of Do It Again, with the primary purpose of grabbing back one of your You Came Backs, ready to use it once more. A lot of games will end up in a situation where at 9 ink, you can quest with Ariel, play You Came Back for 3 ink, then quest again with Ariel, and play Do It Again for 3, returning You Came Back to your hand, ready to be played a second time for your final 3 ink, and you get the idea. 15 lore in 1 turn, from 1 pair of You Came Back plus Do It Again. Finally, I have 2 copies of McDuck Manor in this list. This location is proving itself to be a real menace in the meta right now, and in this particular deck, it's pretty simple to use. With all this combo-y aggression, slamming McDuck Manor can diversify your threats and lay down more pressure for your opponent. Odd combos like Manor plus Bonsai or Manor plus Don Carnage on the same turn can be difficult for opponents to deal with, especially if they are stuck 3 or 4 ink behind you. As a summary of the entire list, remember to keep your win conditions in mind when playing this deck. Ramp up quick, refill your hand with Hiram or Clarabelle, and execute your deadly combo. As a comparison, the play pattern in general feels somewhat similar to Ruby Amethyst. If you can imagine those Ruby Am games where you sit back and wait, drawing up a bunch of cards until the proper time to begin Goat plus Bounce combos to close out the game. This deck is similar in that it also wants to collect those combo pieces and then choose the right time to pounce. The difference, of course, is that Ruby Amethyst does this bit by bit over time, accumulating lore here and there, whereas this ward combo deck moves all at once, exploding out the combos as soon as you can. That, of course, can make it more deadly, but it trades off consistency and defensive removal options in favor of that potential Hail Mary combo moment. But if you like the idea of that high-risk, high-reward playstyle, I highly recommend checking out this deck. As you dive in and give this list a shot, keep these bread and butter opening sequences in mind. There are 2 main openings in this deck. Both involve ramping into card draw to gain resources for your impending combo. First up, the classic turn 1 item into ramp into Hiram is always a good opening. In particular, this is a solid line when playing against a slower deck or against steel decks that struggle to defeat Hiram right away, allowing him to draw 4+ cards rather than just 2. In these turn 3 Flaversham lines, you'll go into turn 4 either curving up into a 5-cost character or playing out Fishbone Quill plus something like Bonsai next, ready to jump into your higher cost combos soon after. The other main branch of opening lines is turn 1 Clarabelle into Fishbone on 3, ready to shift big Floodborn Clarabelle in on turn 4. You might even need to play Vision on 2 to find that all-important Fishbone Quill on 3. This is common if you start out with the Clarabelle duo after the mulligan, but still need Fishbone Quill to make the sequence work. If you know you might be under pressure from an aggro deck or a Flynn Sisu deck, this is likely the better opening compared to Hiram. Even though you aren't playing out a character on turn 3, the ability to weave in a character on turn 2 like Tipo or especially Bonsai helps a ton against early game decks. Add in the shift into Big Clarabelle, and you can respond to threats much better than a solo Hiram can do on his own. That's not to say this is considered a purely defensive opening though. The game plan is the same: ramp and draw into your combo pieces, and treat the deck as aggressive, just with bigger components thanks to your ramped Inkwell. As you might expect when thinking of the mulligan strategy, these openings I just covered are what you're aiming for, so toss back your aerials, you came back, do it again, and McDuck Manors. You'll be finding them soon enough thanks to your draw engines of Hiram, Clarabelle, and Vision. This iteration of the Ward combo deck is very focused in on its singular goal. But if you want some additional options and tech ideas, consider the following. Ursula, Hades, You're Welcome, and Hideaway are all different defensive tech options, each defending against different threats, as I'm sure you can surmise. The most important card here by far is Ursula, and she's one that I often include in this deck. With the right timing, she can shut down Ruby decks from B-prepping your aerials, which is one of the vital weaknesses of this deck's core combo. Plus it's Ursula protecting Ariel, how ironic. Some other considerations include Tamatoa and Lucky Dime. These cards are obviously more ways to double down on the item synergies of Hiram and Ariel, and Tamatoa is another great target for You Came Back, while Ariel benefits greatly from Lucky Dime as well. These are fine inclusions, but it can be difficult to fit these in without changing the identity of the deck from a fast mid-range list into something that needs more removal to set up your bigger pieces. If anything, I'd rather go in the opposite direction and go smaller overall, with inclusions like Cursed Merfolk, or even Gazelle, who can throw Evasive onto Ariel so she can have both Evasive and Ward protecting her. These are pretty spicy when paired with Sapphire, so I recommend trying these out, especially the Gazelle. Alright, I need to wrap up this video here, but I'll leave you with a glance at my Inventors version of this deck. I realized early on that Hiram plus Goofy opens the way for other Inventors like Tadashi and Yokai. This version of the deck is not an improvement by any means, but it is fun to try out things like We Could Be Immortals, which at its best absolutely wrecks steel decks, and at the very least works as a singable ramp card. Also keep other Inventors like Donald Duck and Go-Go Tamago in mind. But with that, thanks for watching everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, peace.